So I'd like to take a little bit of time discussing the questions that I posed in the homework this week. What is design? What is graphic design? And what is the difference between graphic design and art? So I did enjoy reading all of your responses, and a lot of you were sort of on the right track of what I was looking for. Although I do want to note these questions didn't have right or wrong answers. Um, but on the question of design, a lot of you were a lot more specific than I think you necessarily realize. So, design is really anything that is made by people. It's pretty much impossible for humans to make something without designing it. So right now, as you are watching this video, unless you're sitting in the middle of a forest, pretty much everything around you that isn't natural was designed. So I'm recording this in my living room, and I'm a very big board gamer. I own well over 500 games, and so surrounding me in this game, or in this room, are a bunch of shelves full of games. And so just sitting in this room, obviously each one of those games was designed, but so were the shelves that they're on. So is the table that I'm sitting at, and my laptop, and the poster on the wall next to me, and the doorway between the living room and the kitchen, which has this weird little arch to it. Everything that is created by humans is designed. And it's an important thing to keep in mind if you are looking at design as a career. There's a huge spectrum of jobs out there that fall under this category of design. I know from your introductions on Canvas, several of you are looking at interior design. That obviously is a element of design. Some of you may be thinking about going into graphic design, which is an element, obviously, but there are a whole bunch of other categories of design too. And what I do want to point out specifically is something called industrial design. So industrial design focuses on physical objects, things like phones and ovens and cars and pots and pans and all that kind of stuff. And I want to mention industrial design specifically because there's this great TV series called The Genius of Design that you see here on the screen. This was done about 10 years ago by the BBC, and there are 5 episodes to it. Each one's about an hour long. I do want to stress I am making a recommendation here of something that I think some of you might be interested in watching. This is in no way an assignment. You do not need to watch this at all. But this first episode, called Ghost in the Machine, really specifically focuses on industrial design. But it, I think, shows very nicely what it means to be a designer and the process that designer goes through and the history of design, which I think a lot of you would be surprised to discover is considerably older than you might think. One other fun thing about this show is the narrator of the show is Dennis Lawson. If any of you are Star Wars fans, Lawson played Wedge Antilles in the original trilogy. He is also Ian McGregor's uncle. So the show also has a nice little Star Wars connection. At least the first episode, and it looks like the third episode, are here on YouTube. I haven't really looked around to see if the rest of them are out there. But again, I find this first episode really interesting, and I think it's worth the hour to sort of sit and watch this and see what industrial design looks like. So that's the issue of what is design. Graphic design is obviously a component of design. But graphic design is, first of all, much older than a lot of you apparently think. Quite a few of you gave the answer of graphic design being specifically using software to design things. And it's worth noting graphic design is actually several hundred years old. It vastly predates software or computers or anything like that. If any of you have watched the TV series Mad Men, Don Draper is a graphic designer. He never calls himself that, but that's definitely what he does in that show. And of course, that was set in the 50s and 60s. So graphic design has nothing at all to do with computers. Today, most graphic design is done on the computer, but that's just because it's a nice, convenient way to do things. But computers are not required to do graphic design. So graphic design is really that element of design that specifically focuses on visual communication. So graphic designers are responsible for the layout and presentation and design of pretty much anything that you have around you that was printed. So magazines, newspapers, books, here again in my room, all of these board games, they're all printed things, and so they were all touched at some point along the way by a graphic designer. These days, digital design is an important element of graphic design, so we also have graphic designers involved in the creation of websites, in the creation of applications both on your computer and on your phone. Graphic designers design billboards, they design t-shirts and car wraps. If you've been driving down the road and you've seen one of those cars that sort of has advertising wrapped all around it, that was probably done by a graphic designer. There's a cool subset of graphic design called environmental design that focuses on things like signs and wayfinding devices and all of those types of things. So basically anything that has to do with visual communication, menus, all of the things I've also mentioned here, that is what graphic design is. So hope that's kind of clear. Go ahead and proceed on to the next video where we'll talk about the difference between art and design.